Good morning. Welcome to Kollel Boker. It's Friday out of Shabbos. It's the longest Friday of the year. In Chicago, 8:10 is lift pension. There was once a group of French Jews that traveled to New York to be by the Rebbe. And this group that was not necessarily accustomed to how things work were sitting at a Farbrengen while the Rebbe was speaking, as he would talk for hours. And one of these participants, he had to go out of the room. So he makes his way through the thousands of people and gets out, takes care of whatever he had to take care of, and then he wants to come back in, but you can't get in. It's packed. You get in, but you can't get to your place. So he's trying to push his way in, and he realizes it's not going to happen. So he waits on the side, somewhere a little bit off on the side. He could see the Rebbe. Can't really hear so good from that vantage point, but he's watching. And at some point in the Farbrengen, the Rebbe is giving out bottles of vodka. And it was a custom. People that were moving to a new place or opening up a new center or had a special occasion, they would come by the Rebbe and he would give them a bottle of mashke, a bottle of vodka, and say, take this to your destination, or for the occasion that it is, use it, say Chaim on it, and so on and so forth. So he didn't know exactly how it works. He got into line, and he comes by the Rebbe. The Rebbe hands him a bottle of mashke, and he says, this is for the wedding. Now, he almost fainted because he was married, happily married. And one of two things. Either the Rebbe doesn't know what's going on, God forbid, or something's about to happen that he doesn't want to happen, heaven forbid. So he's in this predicament. He decided he's going to make fun of it. The Rebbe gave me a bottle, wedding. He said this is for the wedding. The shliach that was with him, Rabbi Melul from Paris, he told him, listen, the Rebbe doesn't make mistakes. Tzaddikim don't make mistakes. Time will tell. Hold on to the bottle. Time will tell. So he holds on to the bottle. And as time goes on, it's becoming more and more clear that this bottle is just going to sit there. And months go by, and it's getting close to Pesach. And Rabbi Melul reminds him that the minig, the custom that we have, is that you don't sell chametz that the Rebbe gave you. You don't sell. Okay. Normally, if you have bread, cake, whatever it may be, crackers, and it's Pesach, you sell it to a non-Jew, and then you could buy it back after Pesach. But if you got a bottle of vodka, which is chametz from the Rebbe, you don't sell this out. You finish it. So he said, we got to finish the bottle, but there's no wedding. Okay, let's make a Farbrengen. The Rebbe gave you a bottle of mashke. You don't understand exactly why it is, and you'll have the Farbrengen, and you'll, okay. So decided in the Chabad house by Rabbi Melul, they're going to make a gathering, a Farbrengen. They invited all their friends. They actually got very nice food, and they ordered a musician to play some music, and it's going to be a real Farbrengen. They're going to enjoy and celebrate the special gift the Rebbe gave them, obviously for some kind of deeper reason. And as they're getting ready for this Farbrengen, there was some kind of flood. Something broke, a pipe busted in the Chabad house, and they couldn't do it there. So they decided to move it to, it's called the Zibitzin in the Pletzel, in the ghetto in Paris. There's a shul where the Rebbe would daven when he lived there. In 45, 46, he went to get his mother, and he spent many, many months there. They decided they'll make the Farbrengen over there. So they move the caterer, they move the music, and they do everything over. And they sit down for the Farbrengen. As they're sitting down, there's a knock on the door, or the door opens up, and the Rav from just up the road, he's actually a Satmar Jew, by race. He has a shul literally down the block from 17. He's number 25. He comes in and he says, I'm doing a chuppah, and I need a minyan. Okay, because some guys come, so a bunch of people get up and they walk to this chuppah, and they look around, and there's literally no minyan. They manage to get a minyan, and what's going on here is it's a ger tzedek, someone who converted. He doesn't have relatives and not many friends, and he's getting married to a girl who is the daughter of Holocaust survivors, and her parents are not even at the wedding. And they look around, where's dinner? Oh, we're not doing dinner. It's just a chuppah. Not doing dinner. Listen, come down the block. We have a whole dinner. So they finish the chuppah, and the chassan kala come into this Rebbe, and there's music, and there's a caterer. They're celebrating beyond. Totally unexpected. At some point during the celebration, the kala hears what the story behind this party which just happened to be there is. That here's this yid who went by the Rebbe, and the Rebbe gave him a bottle for the wedding, and he freaked out, not knowing what it meant. And it turns out that this is for just to cry. And she says that her parents, when they survived the Holocaust, they decided that they are not going to practice the Judaism. They're going to hide the fact that they're Jewish. And they raised their daughter without any religious life. But she, the neshama is very, very strong and very live and very potent. And the neshama is around, and she found her way to Yiddishkeit. And she became religious, observant. And her parents were very upset. We don't want this. And when they always gave her a hard time, but when she got engaged to be married, and here's a very religious Jew, they really wanted to disown her. And they made her a lot of problems, and they promised her that you're out of our will, no matter what happens, you're not getting anything from us, we don't want to talk to you, we don't want to see you. And she says, I was sitting 2 weeks ago, crying, and asking Hashem, give me a sign that what I'm doing is the right thing. I'm trying to be more observant, I'm trying to do the right thing. And here they're upset at me, and they give me such a hard time. And I come to the wedding, and there's a bottle that the Rebbe sent, and there's a whole party rather set up for me. It's unbelievable. I say this story because it's a great example of many stories that a tzaddik doesn't make a mistake. A tzaddik knows what he's doing. A tzaddik is a receptacle to the Shekhinah, and Moshe Rabbeinu doesn't make mistakes. Yet we find in this week's parsha a very, very strange thing, which is very troubling. Moshe sent spies. We spoke about this many times this week, about the spies that Moshe Rabbeinu sent. And the question I want to address today is, how come he didn't realize, hey, there must be a problem here? How come the bells didn't start ringing, the red flags didn't start waving? Why are you sending spies? Sending the spies changed so much in Jewish history. It was literally the divider. Up until that point, the Yidden, that generation, they were the amazing generation. They were the best. They're called Dur Deah, the generation of knowledge. They received the Torah. They experienced so many miracles. This is a very special generation. Okay? And after that point, the entire generation gets wiped out. Literally, they died in the desert. They're buried. No one knows where they are. Terrible situation. All as a result of sending those spies. Secondly, if you think about it, Moshe Rabbeinu ends up staying in the desert, not going into Eretz Yisrael. It definitely has to do with that. Okay, of course, we say the reason is because of the hitting the rock with the water, but in a deeper sense, Moshe is a leader of his generation. He stays with his generation. His generation is buried in the desert. He's staying with them in the desert. Can you imagine if they wouldn't do the sin of the Meraglim? It'd be a different world. So not only did it change it for them, it changed it for Moshe. And it also changed it for us. For the rest of history, we have on that night, on that day of Tisha B'Av, when they complained and the Yidden cried and they said, we don't want to go into Eretz Yisrael, we have terrible tragedies we should never have them again. The destruction of the first Beit HaMikdash, the first temple, the second temple, the expulsion of the Jewish people from Spain was connected to that day, the beginning of World War I. So many terrible things went on as a result of that. And the question is, what was Moshe thinking? It's not like the Egel, right? The sin of the golden calf. Who instigated that? Erev Rav. He had a group of Egyptians who were not Jewish. They saw the Jewish people are being saved and they're leaving Mitzrayim. Oh, let's go be part of this. And they joined. And they instigated and they got the Jewish people. Okay. Or next week we'll learn about Korach. Who got this whole Korach rebellion against Moshe Rabbeinu going? It was two troublemakers, Dasan and Aviram. They've been troublemakers forever. Okay? This is a story about the Meraglim. It's not Erev Rav. It's not Dasan and Aviram. It's Moshe himself. He's the one that sent them. And it begs the question, how is it possible for a tzaddik, Moshe Rabbeinu, the greatest prophet that ever lived, to mess up to such a level that has such disastrous consequences for generations to come? So I want to share something which is really central to teachings of Chabad that the Rebbe speaks about, and it's brought in many Hasidic discourses, which will help us understand a little bit what's going on here. What happened really? Torah says in our parasha, Shlach lecha, send for you Anoshim. Exactly the background story we don't know from here, but in Dvarim, before Moshe Rabbeinu passes away, he talks to the Yidden, and he tells them a lot of what went on historically, mistakes that they've made, he reprimands them, he warns them not to make the same mistakes again, to learn from the past and so on. And he says exactly what happened. He says, Vatikrivun elai kulchem, all of you came up to me, and you said, let's send people. Let's figure out. Let's figure out what's going on in the land. And he says, Vayitav be'einai hadavar. It was a good idea in my eyes. Rashi tells us, what do you mean in my eyes? Who are you? I asked Hashem, and Hashem said, it's up to you. Rashi says, be'einai v'lei be'einai hamokim. It was not good in Hashem's eyes, it was good in my eyes. Why? Because Hashem told him, if you want to, you can. Right? And therefore I decided to do it. So if you think about it even deeper, Hashem didn't even tell you to do it. This terrible result was Moshe Rabbeinu's doing, that he decided on his own. He asked Hashem. It wasn't forbidden, but it was clearly not something which was encouraged. And yet he goes ahead and does it. Now, what makes the question even stronger, Yeshua, 40 years later, does the same thing. And he sends Meraglim. It's interesting. We use the term Meraglim, spies. It doesn't say Meraglim in our Parsha. It says Losur, to scout out, to check out, to tour even the land. Spies are very different. Okay? When you want to go to war with a country, first you want to know if it's even a good idea to take the country. You send one group of spies or people to check out, is it a good land? They tour it. And once they come back and they say this is a great place, then you send spies secretly and they go and check it out. Okay? Moshe Rabbeinu sent 12 spies with fanfare. Everyone knew their name. All the Jewish people knew who they were going. It was one spy, or one inspector, if you will, from each tribe representing them. When Yeshua sends spies, it's a secret. No one knew about it. We don't know. No one knew their names. No one knew that they were going. They secretly went in. That's spying. Okay? Why? Because Moshe was sending them for a PR mission to convince the Jewish people that they're good, that the land is good. Not for spies. Moshe sends. Who sends real spies, in the literal sense, to check it out, to figure out what the weakness is and how to battle it? That's a general sends. Okay? So this is just an important component here to realize that Meraglim are here to find out what's bad about the place, what's weak, where can we break it. Lasur, Tayarim, tourists that Moshe sent, or to check it out, find out the nice things, give us a nice regards. How nice was that vacation? What is it like over there? Okay, the Malbim talks about this at length, and he says it's two different types of groups that you're sending. One is sent, for PR purposes, and one is sent by the generals to figure it out. Okay, but anyway, we know the end of the story. They came back, and they said that the land is bad, and the Jewish people started to cry and complain, why do we have to go out of Mitzrayim in the first place? And we have to go to there, and we'll die, and our wives and children. It was terrible, disastrous results from everything that happened over there. Okay, and the question is, why did Moshe Rabbeinu do this? It was pretty clear that Hashem wasn't for it. It's up to you. Should be a very, very big reminder. Okay? If you ask the Rebbe a question, should I go into this business? And the Rebbe says, I'm not advising you. Would you do it? Go to any expert for advice. Okay? You're not sure. Should you not? And this expert in the field tells you, I'm not advising. If you want, your call. Would you do it? Of course not. And Moshe has a relationship with Hashem, who for decades, well, not yet decades, but years, he tells him exactly what to do. And here, truth is, it is decades. And here, he doesn't tell him. He said, the only time, if you want, you could do it. How come he didn't realize? How come he didn't figure out maybe this is an issue? Okay. And why does Yeshua go and do it again? He makes the same exact move. Moshe did it. and now Yeshua is doing it. You survived that. You lived through a generation who suffered the consequences of sending spies, and you yourself go and send spies again. So Moshe does this, he does it. Now, the Abarbanel is the only one of the Mefarshim who says this. He says that Moshe Rabbeinu really did not go into Eretz Yisrael because of the spies. Even though Torah says multiple times, actually every time Torah says that Moshe didn't go into Eretz Yisrael, it clarifies the reason, because hitting the rock when the Yidden needed water, and he should have spoke to the rock, and didn't sanctify Hashem's name. And Rashi tells us, why does he emphasize it so much? You shouldn't think that it's because of the spies. He was not part of the spies issue. But the Abarbanel says that is out of respect to Moshe. But in a deeper sense, it's really because of that. It's because of the Meraglim. And his proof is, because in Devarim, Moshe Rabbeinu says, Gam bi his anaf Hashem, which means Hashem also got upset at me because of you. So it is referring in a way to this concept of spies. Okay, but it's very difficult to understand this Abarbanel, because first of all, we know so many times Torah says otherwise. And why would Yeshua do the same thing? If Moshe was indeed punished and doesn't go into Eretz Yisrael because of that, you think Yeshua would go and do the same thing? So I want to share what Chassidus tells us, which transforms the entire outlook of what's happening here. Okay, every part of Torah has the external part and the internal part, just like your body. Your life is a body and a soul. And we can't get away from the literal pshat. It says, it is what it says, but there's a deeper idea here. There's a story, it's a phenomenal story. You may have heard this, but it's worth hearing this again. There was a Yid, his name was Dr. Tzvi Hirsch Weinreb. And this Yid was a rabbi in Maryland, and he was a doctor, a professor in philosophy. And in his 30s, he was at a crossroads, let's just call it an early midlife crisis. He was thinking to himself, should I do more of the philosophy thing? Should I do more of the rabbi thing? What direction should I take? On top of that, he had some questions about faith and Hashem. He was giving a lot of classes in the city, and he was starting to think, I don't know, this whole Eibishter thing, this Jewishness, what school should I send my children to? There was a lot of situations going on in his mind, and he was really confused and not sure what path to take about some very fundamental Jewish issues. He decided to ask the Rebbe. So he calls 770, this is February 1971, and he asks Rabbi Chadakov, the secretary, wants to talk to the Rebbe. What's the issue? And he says, I'm a Jew from Maryland, and I have some doubts about Emunah and some questions about what direction I should take in my life. And the rabbi side, the philosophy side, I'm not sure what to do. All of a sudden he hears the Rebbe's voice on the line. And the Rebbe is talking to the secretary. And the Rebbe says, tell him that there's a Jew in Maryland by the name of Dr. Weinreb. Seek him out. Talk to him. He could advise you. This Dr. Weinreb is on the phone. And he was so shocked. He was trying to be anonymous, but he was so taken. He says, but I'm Dr. Weinreb. So the Rebbe says, sometimes it's a good idea to talk to yourself. Obviously, this Dr. Weinreb got the message, and he hung up the phone, and he made some very, very strong soul searching and some decisions. He actually later became the president of the OU, and he's since retired, but it was a very, very, very emotional and important time in his life. But what's really going on here? What's the Rebbe telling him? I could answer your questions. I could tell you what to do, but you're going to be missing the point, right? You're going to be in a situation where, okay, I told you what to do and you did it. Sometimes you got to look at yourself, ask yourself the questions, make those decisions, pull yourself up by your boots and do what you're supposed to. Grow up. Okay? Very often, we look at the greatness of Hashem, and Hashem is helping us and doing all these beautiful things for us, and it's great. Okay? But Hashem wants us to do something in our lives. He wants us to make a dwelling place for Hashem. What's the first Aveira that happened in Torah? First sin that was committed, the Eitz Hadas. What happened? Hashem sent, frankly, a serpent, the snake, to convince Chava to eat the fruit. Why would he do that? If you don't want me to eat it, I won't eat it. Because Hashem wanted some investment, some personal involvement there, some choices. Grow up. I'm going to tell you, don't eat this, don't eat that. I'm going to send someone to give you the opportunity to mess up. I'm going to create a scenario where you want to do the wrong thing, and don't do it, and show that you have what it takes. You have the self-control. You could man up and say no to what's wrong and yes to what's right. That's why he did it. That's our whole purpose in this world, is not to be spoon-fed. Moshe Rabbeinu had the same thing. Comes down from the mountain, he sees the Yidden messed up. Why does he break the luchos? Hashem thanks him because sometimes you got to do something and do the right move and understand that it's correct. So when Moshe Rabbeinu heard from Hashem, Shlach lecha, send for you Anashim, our question is, why didn't the red flag go up? Why didn't the alarm start to sound? This is different than usual. Well, something's wrong here. Because Moshe Rabbeinu said, amazing. He was so happy. He said, now finally Hashem says, we've grown up and we have to make the decision ourselves. He's finally telling you, you have to go to Eretz Yisrael. You're asking me, should I send? Should I not send? I want you to figure out the best way to do it according to Torah. And Moshe Rabbeinu said, this is amazing. Up until this point, Hashem takes us by the hand, takes us out of Mitzrayim, brings us to the water, splits the sea, food comes down from heaven, our clothes grow with you, drinking water is from this movable rock, Miriam's well. He fights with the end. Everything is working out. That's not life. You have to go do something on your own. As soon as Moshe Rabbeinu heard it, he said, okay, we're graduating to the next stage. We're independent, not God forbid, really independent, but Hashem wants us to do our part. So he ran with it and he said, great, let's do it. Which explains to us why Yeshua did the same thing. Because that was the normal course. Hashem wants that you should scout it out. Hashem said it's a good land. Why is Moshe saying, let's see if it's good or bad? I told you it's teva, it's a good land. You know how you're saying, is it good or bad? Because Moshe understood that what Hashem wants is that we should do our part, get involved in it. Don't just do it because he said so. It's important to have that commitment. But we also need to have, that feeling and personal involvement and an excitement about it. So Moshe says, yes, let's send them. And the reason why Hashem says L'chol Edaitecha is because he wants you to finally do something on your own. This helps us understand, actually another story. The Gemara, Masechta Shabbos, Daf Nun Gimel, Amud Beis, tells us a story. There was a Yid once, very poor Jew. His wife gave birth to a baby, and just after birth, she died. Terrible story. And he had no money to hire a nurse or somebody to take care of the baby, to nurse the baby. So the Gemara tells us that miraculously, his body changed in a way that he was able to nurse the baby. Okay? So the Gemara talks about it, and there's two opinions. There's Rabbi Yosef that says, Rabbi Yosef says, look at an amazing thing. This person must be very virtuous. A miracle. I mean, a man should be able to nurse a baby. And Abaya says, how terrible is this person? That it changed the order of creation for him. Now, Rabbi Yosef's reaction makes sense, right? Your body miraculously changed that you could nurse a baby is a miracle. You must be very worthy that Hashem does that for you, because it doesn't usually happen. It actually says about Mordechai, according to one opinion, he raised her, was able to nurse her, Esther. That she was his niece. But in any case, this is a different story. But why does Abaye say that it's such a terrible thing? Because the world is created and works in a certain way because Hashem wants us to do our part. He doesn't want to solve everything miraculously. He doesn't want everything to all of a sudden to see split and food falls down from heaven. He wants us to try. He wants us to put an effort. He wants us to make choices. He wants us to discern right from wrong. Get involved in it. Grow as a result. Mature as a result. Correct yourself. All these things he wants. So when Moshe Rabbeinu hears from Hashem, it's up to you. It's like, great. We have to get to that stage at some point, right? So initially, we have big miracles, and Hashem helps the Jewish people grow up. It's like your own children, right? At some point, You have to move from this idea of holding their hand and crossing the street with them, right? You tell them, okay, you figure it out. What do you mean? But they might make a mistake, and not a small mistake. You have to. That's just, if you're not, you're doing them a disservice. You have to allow them to make certain decisions, age appropriate, and you have to trust them. Yes, you could watch from the back and you could step in when you need to. And Hashem does that. He still performs miracles today if needed. But the world is operating in a very natural, what seems to be a natural process. You do your part, and with Hashem's help, you get results. Of course you believe in Hashem, but of course you know it's not you. So Moshe felt, if Hashem says, send it, l'daitecha, what he's saying is, you're graduated. It's time to go on your own. Don't ask me every step. The message is very clear. Sometimes we have to understand that we have to invest ourselves, do our part, get into it, and do what's right. And Hashem is always still there to help us. He's always watching our backs, as they say. We should have success in our choices, much nachas, all of good things, and be zeichet to go into Eretz Yisrael. I'll just mention real quick. It says, if Moshe would have sent Meragelois, women spies, then it would have been a lot different. Historically, especially up until that point, and even afterwards, the Jewish women had faith. The Jewish women were able to feel what's right. In Egypt, men were giving up. Men were throwing in the towel. They couldn't handle it anymore. And the women kept them going. They had that amunah. They had that faith. So there's a pshat. I don't know what the source of it is. It says, if it was women, it would have been a lot different. Have a good Shabbos.
Shabbos. In management, you have a,
Still did not answer this question.
you have a